I want to thank everyone who's visiting our town hall website and watching the videos of our candidates for the 2020 primary. I have with me Mike Broihier, who is a candidate for the United States Senate. And Mike, thanks for joining us.
It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for setting this up, this opportunity up. Thank you.
Well, we were a little concerned that with the time, quarantine and staying healthy at home, that it was hard for our candidates to get out there and talk to our voters. So we thought this would be a good way for us to get the candidates in front of the voters so they can hear what everyone believes and stands for, and so they can make informed decisions in the primary on June 23rd. So what we'll do is we'll have a few questions that are related to you just as a person, and then we'll jump into the policy questions. And the first question I think is fun, and I've enjoyed hearing the responses. During this time of staying healthy at home, are there any shows that you're binging, any books that you're watching, anything that you think voters you'd like to recommend to voters?
Not a lot of time for TV these days, so no. I wish I could, but not. I've been rereading Richard Hofstadter's book, Anti-Intellectualism in American Life, Pulitzer Prize from back in the early '60s, and when I'm trying to understand Trump voters or anti-vaxxers and now the anti-social distancing protesters, his examination of the Red Scare and McCarthyism and how that appealed to Americans. Great book, very worthy of Pulitzer Prize. Also free on archive.org as a PDF. So I'd recommend that to everybody because it's free.
Nice. I have a copy of The Paranoid Style by Hofstadter right here on my shelf. So if you can't get it online, you can ask me and I'll give you a copy of it. So okay, so we've had time for folks to sort of be in place, and things have slowed down. I know for candidates things haven't really slowed down, but during this time, have you learned anything? Has there been any introspection that you've sort of learned about yourself that you didn't know or think voters should know?
Well, as Lynn and I are farmers. My wife and I are farmers, and in fact, while I'm here in comfort chatting with you, she's out picking asparagus by herself. So, but you get a lot of time by yourself inside your own head. And a couple of years ago, when people started using the term very frequently about mindfulness, I started looking into it, and so not so much during this, but I have learned it in the many hours bent over picking asparagus that it's better to shut off the internal dialogue in your head and don't refight old arguments or revisit old grudges, but use time for like self introspection. And I think that last summer when this was going on, almost exactly this time, it really helped me form the core of my campaign, sorting out my ideas, which came up with the basic thrust of my campaign of economic and social justice for all.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we're going to jump into the policy questions. And what we did is we asked Democrats over a couple of weeks in April to submit to us questions that they had for the candidates for the various races we have on the ballot. Some of these are COVID-19 related and the impact that's having. Others are related to sort of community building. So we'll just jump through. The first one is, COVID-19 has changed and will continue to change several aspects of our everyday lives. And we've heard from voters that it has illuminated for them or shed light on for them on the great income inequality here in the Commonwealth. Moving forward, what should leaders be doing to address this issue of income inequality?
Well, the key word, I think, Clint, is exposed, because the people who deal with it every day, they live in it. So they didn't need any exposure. I think you probably look at the rest of us saying, welcome to, a little late to the party, but you're welcome. And it's the focus, the almost monomania focus on the stock market as the sole indicator of the economic health of our nation. And people here in Kentucky, we have double the national average of people working the minimum wage. We have the fifth worst economy in the country. It's a very real everyday thing for people, so they know it. So for me, I think we have collectively come to realize that our very, very lowest paid workers right now are the ones who are selflessly working away. And now, they've been thrust to the front. So two things that I think we need to do going forward is insist on a universal basic income, not just for the pandemic, but after the pandemic. And it's going to take a while. I think that the recession or depression that follows is going to last, a year and a half. The emergency UBI going until a month past there, and then switch to a permanent universal basic income. And the other thing, of course, we have to do is absolutely every opportunity support workers' rights to organize and demand fair wage and demand fair treatment.
Definitely. Another thing that people have talked about as a result of this is it's exposed, again, the critical weakness in our system of employer-based healthcare. It's become painfully obvious for a lot of folks. What do you believe is the best way to remedy this problem for now, for before the next crisis comes around, or just in general? Like, what are your ideas?
Well, I've always advocated building a ground-up single-payer healthcare system, and we've got some great examples. We can take best practices from Canada and Australia, a place where there's both very, very high customer satisfaction. People like it. And even in our Medicare system now, into the VA, people inside those systems like them. So there's high levels of satisfaction, also economic efficiencies, a strong economic argument for a single-payer healthcare system. When I started my campaign, I said, well, to get to that point, let's keep the Affordable Care Act and have a public option. Now during the pandemic, 30 million families suddenly thrust onto unemployment rolls, 30 million households without health insurance and face the largest health crisis in a century. We need to blow Medicare open and have Medicare for all. I still want to do a ground-up system, but for now, the Medicare system is in place. So we need to have Medicare for all because we cannot do this without healthcare. Cannot do it.
This is my last COVID-19 related question.
Okay.
So small businesses across Kentucky are hurting right now. Many have applied for the Paycheck Protection Program. Others have yet to access those funds. We are particularly concerned about minority-owned small businesses. What should be done to make sure that people of color are not shut out of programs like the PPP?
Well, again, I think this has exposed it. The coronavirus has done one thing is brought a lot of these inequalities, either social or economic inequalities, to light and into the public discourse. But if you were to ask a minority small businessman or businesswoman before this, they would have talked to you about the fact that redlining, although it's illegal, exists as they try to pursue a small business loan. So for them, it's just, again, everyone else, welcome to the party and figuring this out. So, and I think that, again, and I hate to keep answering the question the same way, but the focus on bailing out corporations, instead of injecting money at the bottom where it will work the best, we still focus on corporations, and the lack of protections, I think, in the CARES packages, a lack of oversight to ensure companies that, like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, double dipped, took $20 million out of the pot. Think how many businesses in Kentucky that would have kept afloat, if Ruth's Chris hasn't gobbled up $20 million. And so absolutely, I think we need to do is ensure in the future CARES packages, and there will be other CARES packages, that we have oversight and that the money goes to the people who work. Now, if we had a universal basic income, a true universal basic income, it wouldn't be such a big issue because we wouldn't have to worry about filtering the money to furloughed and unemployed workers via their employer. They would just be receiving their universal basic income. But going forward, we need to get off this bailing out corporations all the time because it never makes it down to the worker.
Moving now to just sort of the Senate and thinking about this role and how you would approach this. So hundreds of bills have passed the House, only to become paperweights on Senator McConnell's desks. Of these measures, what would you like to see the Senate put into motion day one of the 2020 session?
Well, the non-pandemic, I'll answer it, non-pandemic bills, because they're already out. Universal background checks, overwhelming majority in the House of Representatives, bipartisan, overwhelming bipartisan support in the Senate, not going anywhere because Mitch McConnell's beholden to the gun industry and the NRA. The Violence Against Women Act, which includes red flag laws, but it also recognizes transgendered domestic partners and things like that. So it really modernizes the language of the Violence Against Women Act. Mitch McConnell said we can't afford to do that because of the huge budget deficit. Thank you, 2017 tax cuts. But that, the Paycheck Fairness Act, which will remedy income inequality between men and women, and also people of different sexual orientation or gender identifications, and also the Reclaim Act. There's money actually sitting there waiting to be used. And while I have a broader plan for a huge, federal infrastructure project to put people back to work, there's already money sitting in the Reclaim Act. We've got mine sites in Kentucky that we can put people to work in, cleaning up and getting them into use. So those would be the 4 non-pandemic things that I would move forward really quickly on.
Great, thank you. We're hearing from a lot of the folks that responded that they have this sense that the Senate is broken. And besides removing Senator McConnell, which I think would be a big help, what are the changes that you would like to see in that institution?
Well, interestingly, when the Democrats got a majority in the House of Representatives, a bipartisan group of people got together, led by Democrats, to reform the House rules, because they're just rules. They're not in the Constitution. They're literally House rules. About what is, and so what the problem solvers did is they got enough backing to change the rules of the House, where the House Speaker cannot stop bills from coming to the floor. That if they get enough support, the bills are going to go forward regardless. So getting rid of Mitch McConnell, we need the identical effort in the Senate that changes the rules, that we never have a situation the founders could not have possibly imagined, where we have a craven and selfish man rise to such a position of power that he could literally stop the movement of government by fiat.
So our final 2 questions are sort of related to building community and party, and then I'll open up to you for whatever else you want to share. We have voters that want to know, how will you work as both our nominee and as our senator to engage young voters in the conversation about the issues that are facing Kentucky?
Well, I think the most amazing thing about the young voters that I've been meeting is they are not jaded. They have a vision, and they're eager for a leader with some kind of transformative vision. And if you go back to 2008 with President Obama, when he could communicate a vision, we can be a better world. And they have that enthusiasm and the energy, and they're not jaded, and they think that things are possible. When I was out at Fancy Farm last summer, the Young Democrats had a picnic, and they very nicely invited me to come along. And I just assumed all the other candidates would go. I was the only candidate who showed up. All those people out there, at Fancy Farm, I was the only one who showed up and had a great afternoon, had a couple burgers, drank a few beers, played some cornhole, but more importantly, met all these great young Democrats. And to this day, they're very encouraging, very welcoming, and very, very positive about my campaign. And they invited me to talk to their statewide convention digitally. It was awesome. But I've also reached out to the Louisville Youth Group, which is a LGBTQ youth organization, and they took time, really nice roundtable where they shared their concerns about growing up LGBTQ, but they're still have that youth and that enthusiasm, and like, we can make a better world. And then also with my campaign, I've started a group called Youth for Mike, which is led by a 15-year-old who is a genius, who had his own public access politics TV show, I think, at the age 11. And so I realize how much, they give me so much energy. And when I start thinking, like, am I thinking too boldly? And from them I get, not bold enough, keep going. So yeah, getting them involved and tapping into the enthusiasm and the fact that they're not willing to accept business as usual, because for them, with their student debt and or even some of the young kids aren't even in college, they're facing student debt, or the fact that they want to go into a trade or do something non-college oriented that still requires going to school that they can't afford. So taking care of, absolutely, I've planned to basically return to guaranteed student loans financed by the federal government at 0%. and make it not just for 2-year, 4-year college programs, but for anyone going for certificate programs. You want to become a plumber, electrician, an EMT, a nurse, whatever it is you want to do. And also for people who have accumulated student debt, refinance it under the same program. If you go into public service for 5 years, the debt gets erased. People always ask me as a military guy saying, well, what do you think of compulsive national service? I don't want to compel anyone to do anything, but I sure as heck would like to incentivize them into doing it. And offering this, spend 5 years as a nurse, a firefighter, join the military, be a teacher, do it for 5 years, we'll forgive that debt. Because it is an investment in our future. And it is worth, just like a mortgage, just like buying a house, it is worth investing in our future. And that's a debt, I think that, we just wrote checks for $2.5 trillion. Surely we can invest in our young people's education.
Nice, thank you for that. So our last question, if elected, what will you do as our senator to improve civic competency in Kentucky?
Well, it's good that we're just talking about young people, because they know they don't have to accept business as usual. And I think that my campaign is a pretty good lesson in the fact that you do not have to listen to Washington Democrats. You do not have to, as Kentuckians, I think people should be angered that the national party has stepped in and tried to select a candidate for us and put their finger on the scale in many, many ways. And I think, the grassroots support that I've seen picking up just in the last 10 days, endorsements from Northern Kentucky Indivisible, Penny Round Indivisible, Southeastern Kentucky Indivisible, and other grassroots organizations shows that there are a lot of people who do not care what the national party says, because they have to select a candidate who reflects their values and who's going to represent them best in Washington.
So I just want to open it up to you now. Is there anything else you want to go a little deeper into? Anything else you want to talk about? And then also make sure you can say a little bit about how people can connect with your campaign.
Okay. Well, the word that you used in the very beginning was perfect. Exposed, because this pandemic has really exposed a lot of cracks in our system. We've seen that the focus on money and the stock market has caused our leaders to make really poor decisions that are literally costing Americans lives. This isn't some thing that's happening someplace far away, costing Americans lives. And we've also seen that it's caused timidity, and this lack of leadership we have in Washington is putting the health and of our people and our economy at risk. And so it's time for some bold leadership, and it's time to take a stand and select a leader who can take us through tough times like this pandemic. And on the other side, end up with a just system of government that doesn't break like it has, the next time tragedy strikes. And we need to pick someone who's going to stand for an economy that's just, fair, and recognizes the value of all work, to provide high quality healthcare to everybody, and to focus on providing not relief for people, but also opportunity to those who need it the most. We have to seize the moment here and make our government reflective of our values, and so that the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness is something more than just a catchy, a clever catchphrase. I think, Clint, that the true tragedy of this pandemic would be for us to fail to seize this moment and go back to the comfort of business as usual, where our healthcare is determined by our zip code, or whether you go to jail or not is determined by the color of your skin, or whether the person with the most money has got the most say in politics. I am confident that Kentucky is ready for a change, and I am the candidate with the vision and the motion and momentum to lead that movement forward. So I really hope I answered all your questions and all your members' questions, and I hope I can earn their support.
If they want to reach out, learn more about you, engage with the campaign, how do they do that?
It should be beneath my name, mike4ky.com. You might see that on the screen. And, of course, I know it's tough for people to donate, but donations are always always helpful. But I have an issues page that has everything on it. I mean, just had it out since July, refined some things, added a few things, but basically it's how I feel, and there's been no triangulation or focus grouping. Just stuck it out there and said, this is what I feel about things. And so if people like it, they can go to mike4ky.com/sign up. And I've got this great team of folks who came off Andrew Yang's campaign. When Andrew Yang closed his presidential campaign, they literally got in their cars from New Hampshire and Iowa, Nevada, all the places they were working for Yang, and started driving to Kentucky and joined my campaign. And so they've just seamlessly switched gears in this pandemic campaigning. And so they've come up with great ways to campaign digitally, through texting and emailing and phone banking and stuff like that. But also, I host a show every night off my Facebook page at 7 p.m. We have interesting people on, from Matt Jones from Kentucky Sports Radio was on one night. I had Mark Murphy from the Courier Journal, the editorial cartoonist, very fascinating and interesting guy, and Lamont Collins, who founded the Roots 101 African American Library or Museum in Louisville. Just fascinating people. And so we talk politics, we talk Kentucky, and it's not about me. It's just introducing people to fun and interesting people around Kentucky. We talk politics, but people can send in questions, and we just field them on the fly as they come in, and it's a lot of fun. So they can do that. It's called Chicken Bristle Live at 7 p.m. every night Eastern off my Facebook page.
Well, Mike, we appreciate you spending some time with us. Our voters also appreciate you taking some time out this afternoon so we can record this so that they can review this and help them make their decision. I want to remind everyone that is watching that the primary is June 23rd. We will be posting information on our website about how to access your absentee ballots so that you can vote safely. And we're hoping that this actually helps increase turnout and that people will have a greater opportunity to make their voice heard. But Mike, thank you so much. I'll let you get back to the rest of your day and maybe help your wife out on the farm and pick up some asparagus.
Clint, thanks so much for having me. It's a tremendous opportunity, and I do look forward to when I get a chance to see everyone in person again. But until now, we had to do it this way. So thanks for hosting this.
Yeah, no problem. You have a good one.
You too.